Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley, Gorilla Girl filmmaker, lunar goddess, and cinephile.
Hey y'all, this is your guest ghost host Lila K. I'm coming at you from the Mile High to bring you chills and thrills.
And I'm your co-host John Thomas, ghost hunter, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, horror, home skillets, and poltergeist peeps out there? In today's episode, we're traveling back in time again, this time to the 90s and early 2000s to discuss our favorite horror movies. Join us and our special returning guest, and like Kris Kross, we're going to jump on in.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. Was that 90s enough?
That was, yeah, totally 90s.
Kris Kross will make you jump. Daddy Mac will make you jump.
Oh, dear.
As Nathan raises the roof. Just one hand, because we're only, too cool for both. Just one hand.
Yes.
The roof is not my son, but I will raise it.
The roof is not on fire?
Aw, let that motherfucker burn.
Yes.
All right. Bring us back.
Oh, yeah, I do that. I forgot. Jesus.
Every time.
Huh?
Every time.
Every time is because I get so wrapped up in everything else that we're doing that I forget. All right, everybody, welcome back. Like Ashley said, we have a returning guest. It is Nathan. He's coming back to talk 90s and 2000 horror with us. Welcome.
Woot woot. Happy to be here again, guys.
Welcome back, horror guru.
Hey, I'm just happy to be talking some 90s and I guess 2000s horror.
Yeah.
I think we're going to mostly get wrapped up in the 90s, but we'll see where it evolves to.
Right.
And we have awesome ghost host, Lila.
Hello.
So exciting to have this awesome crew.
Yes.
I feel like it's not a good day unless we have some pretty good Golsome hosts on and guests. Golsome?
Something's got away from you there.
I think it did, because I got a Golsty bus and a ghost host. We got all the goalie things going on. I love it. 3Haunted.
Yes.
Back at you. All right. So let's crisscross it in. Let's jump on in.
Yeah.
Where are we going first with the 90s? Okay, you know what? Let's go, because I know this is, most of us kind of grew up around this era time. Let's go with your top five. Top five 90s horror films.
Top 5 90s. Ugh, jeez.
You gotta bust out the notes. Hold on here.
Well,
5 is a lot, first of all.
it can
Just
be.
in the 90s.
5 is hard for me on this, okay? I could do
like
a top
30.
20. So, 5 is going to be difficult as is.
I'm gonna try this. Obviously, top of my list is Scream. It was and still is absolutely freaking amazing. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Disturbing Behavior.
Good one.
Shit. What's the other one I watched?
If you don't know it, it doesn't make your list.
It does, because I always forget the damn name though.
What's
Give
it about?
us a synopsis.
Yeah, I'm stuck on.
I know. I bet Nathan knows the title.
Boom. Like
on.
that.
Disturbing Behavior. What was the other?
You
one?
just say 2 words and he'll be like, got it.
I know. I can't remember what the hell I watched. That's funny. I always forget. The Faculty. Jesus.
Okay.
Yes. I was like, I had Elijah Wood in my mind, and then I was like, oh yeah, The Faculty. That's what it was. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4? Shit.
Give us one more.
One more.
You're not going with The Craft?
Yes, but I don't consider that horror. I don't know. I mean, I guess technically it is, but it wasn't scary to me.
Okay. But The Faculty scared you?
No, but I mean, it was more horror-ish. Let's go with, we got to throw Craven in there. Wes Craven's New Nightmare. There we go. There's my 5.
All right. Who's up next?
Lila goes. She's like, nope.
Nope. All right, Nathan.
All right. Well, I mean, I think we're going to be talking about this a lot. I mean, even though it's been talked to death in the theaters right now, I mean, Scream, I mean, you can't, I think that the only way you really split up the 90s is pre-Scream and post-Scream.
Agreed.
It undoubtedly, the 90s had some really amazing films. I don't want to get off the subject of our top 5 with my digression into the very first one I'm talking about. I just feel like, Scream and my number 2, which would be Blair Witch.
Yes.
I think those are probably the 2 most important films that came out in the 90s as far as horror was concerned. Maybe number 3. It's hard. It's hard because there's so many good films in the 90s, but it's hard not to stir away from the real important ones. I mean, I'll say the Silence of the Lambs is not on my list, but goddamn it, it should be.
Yes.
It
like
should
top
be
6.
Yes. I would say, and I think that Ashley might agree with me here, but Bram Stoker's Dracula is definitely on my list. I think that's a gorgeous and lush movie. That's a really great way to do a new version of a story we've seen a billion times. Candyman.
There you go.
The original Candyman. Although, again, there's so many films I want to put on the list. I'm not putting it on the list. It should be in the spot I'm getting ready to go to. What should be there is From Dusk Till Dawn.
There we go.
Because that's also a great and fun 90s horror film. But what is on that list for me to round out my top 5, little film called Brain Scan. I don't know if you know Brain Scan. For the listeners who don't know it, it's long story short, it's Freddy Krueger in a computer, and it's instead of Kevin Langkamp, you have Eddie Furlong.
Yeah.
Not a good film, but fun. A lot of fun. It's in my list of favorite films of all time, and I'm not going to tell you where because it's embarrassing. But I do like that movie quite a bit. So that would be my top 5. So real quick: Scream, Blair Witch, Candyman.
Brain Scan.
Blinking on one. Brain Scan, and there was one more that I said. Oh, Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I know all the movies he said that should have made his list but didn't. I'm like, fuck you, that is on my list.
Well, that's why they're your favorites.
Yeah, so then what's your list then? Compare and contrast.
He's taking all mine. I'm just kidding. Definitely gotta have Dracula on there. Like, Dracula. Mad props. Get it? Anyway.
For those who can't see what's happening right now, Ashley just held up her Dracula pop to the camera.
Yes.
Just context.
I held up my Funko Pop. And fun fact, there's like 4 or 5 of the versions of Dracula just from that movie alone of him. But I prefer like the one with the top hat and the blue glasses. Like, yes. Gary Oldman, yes, please, as Dracula. Which is a surprise, because if you had said that before he was cast, I'd have been like, are you serious?
Right.
He's going to be the romantic? Like, what? And then you watch it, it's like, yeah, I'm sold. I'm going to go with From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yep.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, for me, and I'm just going to say this, but I'd like to revisit it later, I think the 80s was the home of the, like, slasher flicks. Obviously, they had other things in the genre, but that was like kind of what was up with the 80s, what people remember. The 90s, I feel, is like when horror got really sexy. It got smoky and sexy and started, obviously there's other stuff, but a lot of what was pushed out mainstream was, that smoky, heated horror. And so From Dusk Till Dawn, I mean, Salma Hayek.
Right.
Come on.
Yep. We've discussed this already. Yep. Oh, yeah.
With a snake. Like, whoo.
Yeah.
I think you could go flat out. The 90s were sexy vampires.
Sexy vampires, yes.
Sexy vampires in the 90s.
Yes, but I'm also going to say there were some sexy werewolves. Was it American Werewolf in Paris was 90s?
Yeah, that was like 97,
Okay.
98-ish, 99, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's not on my list, but it should have been, like, honorable mention to American Werewolf in Paris. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go with it. It doesn't stand true to time. I watched it recently, and I was like, oh, okay.
Some pretty terrible CGI.
Yeah, but when I watched it then in movie theaters, I was like, whew, okay. Okay, so I've got Bram Stoker's Dracula. Interview with a Vampire is probably an honorable mention. I'm still deciding if that's on my list. Sexy vampire. You noticing a theme here?
Always.
So I'm going with From Dusk Till Dawn. But People Under the Stairs.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
That one is a 90s one that really got to me that I think is on my top list. And definitely going with Candyman. And definitely got to have Silence of the Lambs on there. I mean, my hoop is named Hannibal.
Yes.
And my other hoop is named Clarice, obviously. They're a pair. All right. What about you, Lila?
I am not as well versed in 90s horror as I would like to think that I am. Scream is definitely like number one on the list that I have. I'll probably just do a top 3 just to keep it concise, but Scream is up there, and I feel especially now it is timely to talk about, like Nathan was saying, so I'd love to get into that one. Blair Witch is on my list, and then let's see here, Sleepy Hollow, because that one got me when I was a kid, and it terrified me when I watched it, and I hadn't watched it since. So I've seen it once when I was a kid. I watched it maybe a year ago, so there was this big old time gap because it was too much for me as a child. Watching it back, not nearly as scary, but back then it was not a good time. But I would like to put Craft on there as an honorable mention. Maybe it's not classic horror, but it's got horror elements and is definitely a bit spooky. So
It's about witches.
Yeah.
I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
that one's a pretty good one.
Yeah, there was some creepy shit, and they were getting vengeance,
Well,
and
yeah,
like
definitely.
Nancy went balls to the wall crazy. So like,
Yes.
I think although it might have been a little like less intense of a horror than we're used to,
Right.
I'd still classify it as a horror.
Yeah. They definitely throw it in that category. So, I mean, it goes in there. I'm going to do an honorable mention. John Carpenter's Vampires.
Oh yeah,
James Woods. I fucking love
Yeah.
that movie. That guy was so great. Like, holy shit.
More vampires.
More vampires.
it was fun. I mean, I feel like the '90s was the rebirth of the vampire,
Right.
because you had Blade, which is like action horror. Blade was fucking phenomenal.
was
Like
a good
Steven Dorff delivered well.
Yes.
Nathan disagrees.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Also-
guys.
Buffy the
Yeah.
Vampire
Yes.
Slayer.
Yes.
We had
Yep.
a lot of vampires going on.
Yeah.
I got, so just to elephant in the room, I mean, I was just looking at the list of 90s films, and like, there are so many. I could make 1,000 top 5.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Everything
hard.
from the first
That's what she said.
Wishmaster to Halloween H2O.
Oh, Wishmasters,
Idol,
yes.
Idle Hands, every film that came out after Scream, which included H2O. But I mean,
Yes.
you've got The Faculty, Urban Legend,
Yeah.
I Know What You Did Last Summer, Disturbing Behavior. You've got teen horror movie after teen horror movie, and it's so cool because, I mean, for a while, I feel like the law of diminishing returns was very slight. I feel like until you start getting the sequels of the spin-off, your Urban Legends Final Cut, and and that's still a fun movie, but it's rough. I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like the 90s had, again, Scream blew it up.
Yep.
See, I feel like for me, I've watched a lot of 90s horror, but if we're talking like favorites, it's harder for me to be like, oh man, what have I seen? Like, what does count and what can be categorized as a horror film versus like a thriller or anything like that. So I feel like that's why I have a harder time with coming up with even 5 favorites, where you're having the opposite problem, where it's hard to narrow those ones down. It's like, I like these movies, but are they something that I'm going to go out of my way to watch in my free time? Maybe not.
Well, it's interesting that you say that about thriller versus horror, because, again, the movie that really crystallized that argument for a lot of people, or started that argument, I feel like, was Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
And the reason they called it a thriller is, they didn't want to give Oscars to a horror film at the time. And, I mean, first of all, let's be clear, everybody wants to say, this is this and this is that. And I'm like, genre is fluid. I mean, you can coexist in different spheres. Smart movies a lot of times have a lot of things going on. But at the end of the day, even though Silence of the Lambs is a bit of a thriller, and it's a police drama, and it's a character story, at the end of the day, it's about a guy who is making a skin suit out of women, and they have to talk to a cannibal to catch it. To me, that reads horror.
Yeah,
horror to me.
Absolutely.
And Hannibal Lecter is definitely one of the most indelible horror characters probably of all time.
Right, and Anthony Hopkins just freaked me out. So yeah,
He's amazing. He's amazing. Until Mads Mikkelsen, I didn't think that anybody else could do it, and that's a whole different conversation.
Yes.
Goes, man, Mads.
Well, and to your point, I think a lot of thrillers get miscategorized as thrillers when they're really the genre people didn't understand at that point existed yet, which is the psychological horror.
right.
Yeah.
That you don't have to have a monster for it to be horrific. You don't have to have super gore. Although one might argue Hannibal eating someone's brains with Chianti is like, that's pretty horrible. Like, that's horror. I think that definitely we've introduced new subgenres, which we don't even need, but people I feel like need to give that so then it's allowed. Like, its permission is given because we made this subgenre word, when in reality it's like, what was the intention of the writer? If it was intended to, like, disturb, maybe it's a horror. I think we discussed this last season in the psychology of horror. Right. Is the idea of what is horror, defining horror, and it's like, man, horror really is undefinable. And so for me, The Craft could be horror, and Silence of the Lambs, that's fucking horror. Even the way you describe it, like your synopsis, your log line is like, yeah, that's horror. If someone walked in and pitched that to me, I'd be like, that's a horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course it's a horror movie.
Absolutely.
There's no way getting around that.
So that log line alone, you should pitch that to them. I found it interesting because there's a lot of like little gems out there that people don't realize. Like, did any of you watch the Subspecies movie series?
I've seen
that they had made?
like one, I think, but yeah, it was a long
This
time ago.
that's vampires. I like vampires.
Yeah, the first movie has Angus Trim from Phantasm with a big old white fright wig on his head. Those movies are something else. Full Moon. Well, that would be a good discussion, talking about the rise of Full Moon, because I feel like Full Moon made its time in the 90s.
Sure
with,
did.
Doll Man movies and Puppet Master movies, as far as the eye can see.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single good film in that. No, maybe. Oh, no. Full Moon has made like 2 good films. But the Subspecies movies are a lot of fun. I mean, it's a big drooly vampire.
I mean, they're fun because like the CGI's, or not the CGI, I'm sorry, the practical effects are fun. Like it's over the top. It feels campy, but it's like it's a good old fun, good old monster fun. At least for me.
100%.
I don't think it's meant to be like Dracula.
I mean, I just told about my undying love of Brain Scan. I'm not here to tear down anybody's movie. But no. Subspecies is a lot of fun.
Right.
Well, Vampire Journals, which we've had David Gunn on
Yes.
multiple episodes. He was one of the stars of Vampire Journals, is an offset of the Subspecies movies. And again, it's one of those that are just good vampire fun. And I feel like that's what the 90s was for me. Like, there's a lot of awesome films. But for me, I feel like all the movies that I really enjoyed, it was just like good vampire fun.
Right. So there's one that I'm surprised you didn't actually mention.
I've got a whole list over here.
I know you do,
so-
but I'm just going to throw Tales from the Crypt Demon Night out there.
Oh my god, that's one of my favorites.
Yes.
How did I not have that on my list? Okay,
yeah.
I'm nixing one of my list people.
You got to readjust those numbers.
Yes.
Oh gosh, what did I have on there? One of them's going. And whoa, yes, Demon Night.
Yeah.
You want to talk sexy. That's also sexy. Like how? I don't know, because it was disturbing, but there was something. It was, you have an opening shot of this car chase, and you've got this song, what is it? Filter? Is it
Yes.
Hey Man, Nice Shot?
Yes.
And it's just, you're opening on this dark scene with this sexy fucking song, and it's like, yeah, this is a fun movie.
Not even 30 seconds in, and I'm like, I'm ready.
I think the Lunar Goddess wants to be possessed by Billy Zane.
I'm thinking so. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about that.
Like,
He has a good voice, though. I think they just cast him for his voice, to be honest. Like, don't get me wrong, great actor, but I feel like his voice is the most, like, if you had to say this is what a demon sounds like, I'd be like, Billy Zane.
Right.
That's what a demon sounds like.
Well, and it's also funny because when they cast him in Titanic, that's automatically where I went back to was Demon Knight. Like, what's he doing on the Titanic?
He did so well. He did so well as a demon. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was one of the movies that I went and saw when I was always ditching school. So yeah, don't ditch school, kids. But
The kids aren't listening to this. I hope not.
hey, some are probably.
Oh gosh.
All demons should be played by Gilbert Godfrey, by the way. That's the voice of a demon.
Then demons would never be sexy again.
Or they would never be sexier.
Or never be sexy. We also have It. It was
The miniseries.
yeah.
Yep.
1990. Yep, right on the cusp.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That shit scared the fuck out of me.
I think a big source of fear for a whole lot of kids.
Yeah.
I think a whole lot of kids saw it since it was on TV.
Yep. Scared the
Oh
shit
my
out
god,
of me.
I was forever terrified of taking a shower, like, because I was afraid of what was going to come up through my bathroom sink. Like, I wasn't scared of Freddy Krueger coming up while I was in the bath, but it apparently, like, I would wash my hair and, like, turn and look behind me and keep peeking behind to make sure nothing was going to come up and, like, pull me down the drain and float in the sewers. Like,
Ashley's was
that was
the,
a legit thing.
That's funny. Ashley was the shower. I was like, I am not stepping over a storm drain. You can kiss my ass.
No, mine was the shower too. The shower, that part got me. Because it's like, what are you going to do in that case? You can't, like everything's soaking wet. Like, the floor's wet. You can't go anywhere. You can't run.
Well, and there's something extra vulnerable about being naked.
Yeah.
Like, at least I have my clothes on if I'm going to be yanked down a storm drain and, like, a sewer, grate. Like, at least I've got clothes on. I've got a little bit of dignity, but this clown's going to drag me. I don't know how I'm going to fit down that tiny, like, if you see me, I don't know how I'm going to fit down that tiny little thing, but apparently he's going to drag me down. I don't know. Speaking of which, I have never been scared of those things, by the way. The sewer grated things. What are those called? Sewer grates?
Close enough.
Like sewage caps or just like the drainage ditches?
Like the little...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just sewer drains.
I was out adventuring one night with Kevin, and there was a huge one. Like, you could literally climb down into it if you really wanted to. And I was sitting there, like, at some point, it's like, I was just sitting there, and I don't remember what, we were waiting for something, and so I was sitting facing it. He was seated on the sidewalk facing me, and I was seated on, like, the next to it, and I had my feet next to it. And he's just like, aren't you, that would make me nervous. How could you do that? And I'm like, I'll put my legs in there. He's like, no, you wouldn't. And I did. I, like, scooted forward and dangled my legs in. And he's like, you're crazy. Something's going to come up and grab you. And I'm like, how many adults do you think actually still have that legitimate fear? Like, if you told them, go put your feet in there, how many would do it?
Nope. Not me. Kiss my ass. Nope.
Nathan would do it.
Well, it made me think about foot trauma, which made me think about Misery.
Yes.
Ah, that's
Which is
another good
great
night.
Stephen King 90s movie that came out. Introduced the world to Kathy Bates.
Yes.
And what a revelation that was, because holy shit.
Yeah.
No relation to Norman Bates.
No, but then she pops up in Titanic, so there's our
There we
Full
go.
circle.
you know.
Full circle.
Horror
there.
synergy.
Well, for me, when we were talking about shower drains, and this is now me fast forwarding into the 2000s, Final Destination with the pool drain.
Yeah.
That one
That was
traumatized me, and I still can't swim anywhere near a pool drain.
That was like the third one, I think.
Because I'm
or something.
like terrified just to get like sucked into it, and that's how I'm gonna die.
Sucked into your booty hole. Just
I'm surprised that a strong takeaway from Final Destination series was not driving behind logging
Logs,
trucks.
yes.
You know,
I don't like driving ever. That's the thing. I don't drive behind those because of that
No.
fucking movie.
I gotta go. Like, I'm going this way.
absolutely.
I don't.
I don't think anything was affected as much since, Jaws did for water what Final Destination 2 did for
Logging trucks.
trucks. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even in the first one, I think it was the first one. Yeah, when he sticks his hand down the drain to get the watcher. No.
Is it, what, the garbage disposal?
Yeah, the garbage disposal.
Absolutely
yeah.
not.
Oh hell no.
Those movies have ruined garbage disposals. They've ruined my ability to drive behind certain cars. They've ruined pools and roller coasters.
But they haven't ruined airplanes?
Oh, they ruined airplanes. I mean, I was
airplanes, I'm fine. I don't care. Like, it is what
You
it
know
is.
me and my airplanes. But, yeah.
But while we're talking about childhood traumas...
I feel like any of the I just gave up on the Final Destination films because I'm like, they're all gonna fucking die. Like,
Yeah.
if that's his fate works that way, then they're all gonna die, so I'm just gonna sit here and watch how they all die. Like, there's no chance
That's
that one
the
of
cool
them's gonna
thing.
win, so.
Just to watch, just to watch how like creative they get with the deaths. I think. Oh, also, if we're talking trauma, I will never do LASIK. Sorry, thanks, Final Destination. I don't want a laser cutting my freaking eyeball off. No thanks. That's gross.
Better than cutting other things off.
I don't care at that point. I'm watching it happen with the No, no thanks.
So I feel like 2000s had one of the, in my opinion, one of the best vampire movies because we talk about what movies.
Fucking vampires.
I know we're going back to vampires. No, but it's on my list. Like I'm staring at my list.
I know.
And we just segued to 2000s, but we've talked about this before. 30 Days of Night.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
And I think that that went away from like sexy vampire and like holy shit, this is like George Romero Dawn of the Dead vampires like revamped and terrifying, and they're calculating and they're hunting in groups, and there was nothing about that where I was like, oh, that's kind of hot. It was like, oh my god, this is fucking terrifying. I don't want to go to Alaska.
So that movie ruined Alaska for you, is what I'm understanding.
Well, if we're going to talk about
Sarah
that,
Palin for me, but
It was Sarah Palin for you.
yeah,
She might be one of them.
no, 30 Days of Nights is frightening, and I think that it was like From Dusk Till Dawn. Even though From Dusk Till Dawn definitely had sexiness, I think that it was bringing us some more bestial vampires, because I do think that we were suffering for a while of all the vampires are sexy and they're all sad to be vampires.
They're emo.
Yes, very, very Bauhaus vampires. But I think 30 Days of Night was kind of nice because it was just like, no, we're here to rip necks and drink blood.
And I can respect that.
right?
I can respect that.
Yes.
But then we also had Queen of the Damned.
Right, which...
So the other, she was she was both. She was like the scary creature that just has fun with like killing, humans. But I'm vampire. She didn't care. She was like, I'll kill them all. But then she also was hot, so I don't know. She was the crossover.
There you go. One movie that scared me and scared the shit out of Lila. Granted, she was 10 when it came out.
I know where this is going.
And it's my fault it scared her as much as it did. Was Paranormal Activity. And I remember my cousin had told me about it. She had seen it during like a sneak preview type thing. And she's like, oh my God, this movie's so scary, blah, blah, blah. It's almost like it's real. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll check it out. It sounds like, kind of another Blair Witch type thing, which kind of in a way with the found footage it was. So Lila being 10 and me being the horrible, horrible father that I am, I'm like, hey, Lila, you want to watch this movie? She's like, yeah, okay, sure. So, I show her. I don't even know if I showed you a preview of it.
I have no idea.
I don't
was
remember,
10.
but I know that I was stupid enough to be like, oh yeah, this really happened because it's found footage, so it looks like it really happened. So we're sitting in the theater, and at the end, spoilers if you haven't seen it, you suck still, but when she kills what's-his-ass and throws him at the screen, Lila starts bawling in the theater, and I'm like, I'm kidding, it's not real, I'm sorry.
Well, because the last thing that we see is Micah getting thrown across the room and then Katie's demon face sticking out from the camera and then a black screen. I was like, this really happened? And they put that in the theaters? Like, that was a choice?
Like I said, horrible father for telling her it was real. But...
Well, it's not like I hadn't had introduction to horror movies before. I remember when I was a kid watching scary movies at home alone. And then, like, you or Mom coming home and I was by myself, like, watching Texas Chainsaw or whatever it was that I was doing when I was, like, 8.
I mean, it could have been worse, I guess.
But yeah, found footage movies. I feel like Blair Witch did a really good job of that, and that's why it's on my top. And what I love about that one is that you don't really see the entity that it's causing all the harm, and you don't see the quote unquote bad guy until like, you know, the movie wraps up and that's it. And I think that paved the way for a lot of found footage movies past that point.
If you see the bad guy, though.
Yeah.
Because, like, Blair Witch, you never saw the bad guy.
Technically, you really don't. You still see what's-his-face staring at the corner, and then camera just falls down. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The marketing on that was freaking amazing, though. Like, they marketed the shit out of that. We cannot talk about Blair Witch without talking about the marketing for that movie.
Well, before we get too far away from it, we were supposed to see The Witch.
Right.
There is a part in the movie where it's toward the end. It's one of the last. I'm not sure if, spoiler alert for a 20-some-year-old movie, but at point when Josh had already been taken, and I think that Mike and Heather turn on their cameras and step outside, and they start running, and you literally hear, after they're already upset, Heather's yelling, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck?" Like, oh my God. Right. So apparently the camera did not swing that way, but they had some sort of witch costume thing. And I have to think that, much like, you know, the problems they had with Jaws, it probably was for the best that we didn't see it. So we could just listen to her hysteria, and whatever that we thought about in our heads is going to be a whole lot worse.
Right.
But yes, going back to your point about the marketing, did anybody see The Curse of the Blair Witch? The documentary that they showed on the Sci-Fi Channel
I think I've seen it
before
once.
the movie was released?
Right, yeah, I think I've seen it once, yeah.
I heard of it, but I never saw it.
Curse of the Blair Witch was a mockumentary on Sci-Fi Channel, released I think the week before the movie was released, and it had people who were supposed to be Heather Donahue's family and Josh and Mike's family and the police, and I don't know why. I think it was early days of the internet, because the website was very involved. There was a lot. I don't know what I must have read, but I'm pretty sure that, I caught on pretty quickly that it was not real. I know a lot of my friends, a lot of people thought it was real. I never thought it was real. However, that did not take away from my enjoyment at all. I thought that the movie was brilliant. I thought the marketing was brilliant. How it's made is still brilliant. And the fact that it made so much money and for such a simple, cool idea. And also, let's be real, I don't need a witch to make being out in the woods scary. Just being out in the woods at night is scary to me. So, I don't know. It makes perfect sense of why that movie was such a hit.
The first time I saw it, and I probably told this story, I was watching it on DVD. It came out on DVD, I think, 99. Lila was just barely born, 99, 2000. And DVD player had a headphone jack, so I'm watching it in the middle of the night with the chair, because my headphone cord wasn't very long, in the dark, freaking out, because it's like surround sound through my ears, and I'm just like freaking out every little whisper, creak, turn, something. It scared the shit out of me. So yeah, phenomenal job.
Did you guys watch any of like the sequels? So like Book of Shadows or the remake in 2016? What did you think of those?
Book of Shadows sucked. Sorry, Nathan. Okay, so that's what I thought when I first watched it. Watching back, it's actually not that bad.
You can't say something and take that opinion totally back just because you hurt someone's feelings. If that's your truth, stick to it.
No, honestly, though, I did think
he didn't like
sucked.
breaking Nathan's heart.
He's like, it's awful, but never mind.
Right. No, it was. When I first saw it, that's what I thought. I was like, I don't know about this, but it took me a couple more watches, and then, I ended up liking it for, being the sequel that it was. And with the just Blair Witch, the third one, technically, which goes back to, should be technically the second one, I guess. At first, they weren't marketing that as a Blair Witch movie either. They marked it as The Woods or something like that, and you never knew anything about it until, like, a couple weeks beforehand. And I was like, oh, shit, it's a new Blair Witch. They did it again. They got me. I'm hooked. And
did it
basically,
again.
yeah, in that one they go and they look for it's Heather's brother or something, right? They go back
There's
and
like
try
a
to find
family
Heather.
relation, yeah.
So
I think it's her brother.
yeah, that I like that one. I mean, I liked them both, but it took me a while to get used to Book of Shadows.
The reason I like Book of Shadows is, to me, it's meta universe before there was even such a thing, as far as like, here's a movie and we're creating a scenario and now we're going to make a real movie taking like that was the truth. I don't know, maybe that was what was cool. I don't know, maybe it was because I liked the goth girl that's in it.
I mean, how could you not, right?
Oh, and by the way, she's in Glenn Danzig's new movie, and I hope I'm going to rent Book of Shadows again so she can get a couple bucks from that.
Right.
Man, it's rough. But anyway, that's a whole podcast. But yeah, no, Book of Shadows is a lot of fun. It's not a great movie. It's definitely not nearly as inventive and original as the first one. I liked Blair Witch, the requel, if you will. I guess that was one of the beginnings of the requels. I don't know. There were a couple really inventive moments, but I also feel like I expected a little more from it. But I think it's a good movie. I think it's fun. It's a weird movie to do sequels to, the Blair Witch, I feel like.
I'm going to be controversial.
Go be controversial. What you got?
I think Blair Witch, the requel, attempted to do what Book of Shadows was successfully able to do. Book of Shadows could have had some more, like, maybe love given in the quality area, but both movies were, like, loopy, right? It's like, oh my gosh, what happened? We just woke up and there's something we didn't know happened, and oh my gosh. And it's like this, it feels like the whole movie is like, oh my gosh, what happened? What was that? And like trying to piece together what's going on, and like there's so much confusion in this world and trying to figure out what's going on. And I feel like the requel was just too confusing. They went too much on the extreme, like tents popping up into the sky in the middle of nowhere, and like someone's, infected foot suddenly becoming like a pulsation up their body, like, but then it's gone, but then it's there, but then it's not. And it's like, I think they tried to do too much in the requel and make it too confusing, so that when you get the reveals of like time doesn't exist here and things don't, like, it doesn't work. Like, it didn't work for me. It was like, were the scenes intense? Yeah, absolutely. Were the reveals, like, tense? Yeah, most definitely. But the story as a whole just didn't feel right. It didn't land for me. But when you look at Book of Shadows, they had the same thing going on, like them waking up and not wondering, how did those campers all end up murdered? Spoiler alert. Or why are we all naked? And what is this video showing everybody dancing around jolly, like just LSD tripped out? And like, where did that person that disappeared go? And why is that, like, it was still the same concept of like trying to piece together these things that people aren't remembering, or these weird things that are popping up. But then at the end, the whodunit explanation makes sense, but it's still like not force fed to you, because it's like, even that whodunit explanation is like, is that really what happened? Do you know what I mean? Or like, is there some more magic tomfoolery afoot that right. Put it on the wrong person, which I think is the implication anyways, but she was the witch all along. Like, I don't know. I just think they did better. Like, it made more sense to me and landed. All that confusion and all the mental circling that they were doing just landed better versus the requel, where it just felt like they were trying way too hard and then it didn't land anyways.
Right. I think with that one, they probably should have stretched it into at least another movie.
They just needed to pull back on that Photoshop. Not literally, but like with their storyline. Like, yeah. You had too many clicks in, too many layers. Like, pull back just a little.
Yeah, I haven't seen Book of Shadows. I honestly didn't know it existed until right now. But I have seen the requel, and I did enjoy that one. But I will say it was intense almost all of the time. And so having such high energy and such high intensity and all of those emotions kind of wears you down by the end of it. So that way when you get to the grand finale and having that resolution or not that resolution, like getting to the end, I was like, I'm tired. Let's just go. I enjoyed it, and it is a movie that I will watch again.
Right.
but I have to be in like the proper mental state to do that. Where I feel like with the original Blair Witch, I can watch that one like at any point because I enjoy it. It paved the way for a lot of found footage films that we see in the 2000s, that we see up till now, like Paranormal Activity. There was Grave Encounters in 2011 as well. That one was great.
Second one was good too.
Also combining found footage and monster, we have Cloverfield in the early 2000s as well. So I think that Blair Witch just had this massive power over how we see films today. And I really love that one, and I really admire it.
So I'm going to take us all the way back to 91. We've been hanging out in the... We're hanging out in the late 2000s there for a bit.
A little bit.
To a movie, I don't have a guilty pleasure because I'm not smart enough with my taste to feel guilty about the stuff that I should feel guilty about. But a movie that I honestly holds a very special place in my heart. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. This is a movie I saw opening night with my grandmother. It was a rainy Midwest night, and I had my 3D glasses, and let me tell you, for a movie that a lot of people like to crap on now, and let's be clear, it's not a good movie. One of the highest points of my cinematic life was watching that movie at that time and space and everything. You couldn't touch Freddy in the 80s. I mean, there's no other more influential horror character, I think, in the 80s than Freddy Krueger, maybe even pop culture character in general. Hitting that 91. God, it's a problematic movie. It's weird. It breaks Freddy rules left and right. I don't understand the urge to make the kids do every single thing they're doing in their dreams in the reality. Like, that's the one where they're dreaming about walking up the stairs. In reality, they're walking up air, and it's very odd. And Roseanne and Tom Arnold are in the movie. Alice Cooper's in the movie, and that's cool as hell. But, man, it was a lot of fun. It's also directed by a woman, which is great, and she's a protege of John Waters and Bob Shea, which is also super great. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like before Scream in the 90s, all of our horror heroes were suffering. They were just struggling along. I mean, you could praise New Nightmare because it was the pre-Scream Scream. It was Wes Craven working out those issues before he ever knew that he was going to have like a master class with Scream. Freddy's Dead, man. It's terrible. It's wonderful. Terrible movie. Awesome experience. It's weird. When the teens were experiencing something in their dreams, they were doing everything in the real movie. Like, what's his face? The stoner from Clueless. Breckin Meyer was walking upstairs in his dreams, and in the real life movie, he was like walking up air. It's so dumb. Yeah. It's so dumb. But man, it was a lot of fun. Before Scream, all of our favorite slasher movies were kind of in the dumps. We got a Halloween movie before Halloween H2O, which was definitely a product of Scream in the early 90s, which was Curse of Michael Myers, which, if you've seen the producer's cut, it's a lot better than the movie we got in the theaters. Yes. But it's still kind of a mess. And, Freddy, I think at that time he had already been to Manhattan, so he went to hell.
You mean Jason?
Jason. Yes, Jason went to hell. I'm sure Freddy went to Manhattan too.
I'm sure.
Let the guy go to New York.
Right?
He wanted to catch a show. It's great.
Absolutely.
Concrete jungle where dreams are made of.
Oh, yes.
Or nightmares, apparently.
Wet dream tomato. Got it. Ashley's face.
Did you just say wet dream tomato?
I dare you to listen to that song now and not hear Wet Dream Tomato. You're welcome.
Okay. So
she said, moving on.
I think there were just so many, like, we did this in the 80s, right? Like, there's so many good movies. Like, We didn't even talk about movies that dealt with like realistic phobias, and I say that loosely, but like arachnophobia.
Oh yeah.
Or you have, what was it, Mimic?
Yeah.
I know that's not realistic, but I'm just saying like insect-like creatures, but it's just like it's more realistic than Freddy. Come on.
Right.
I'm glad that you could hear my look.
I heard your look. I felt it. I felt the energy of your look. He gave me the look. It's not a good one.
Mimic is realistic, ladies and gentlemen.
Well,
Shut up.
is Species realistic then too? Because that was 90s.
All right, we're done.
I just wanted to find a
Species
way
is
to
great.
throw that in there. That's all.
Yeah, that was a good one. It was really good. What was the other one that was like Mimic? What was that?
There was Slither, but that was 2000s.
Well, I mean, if we're talking 90s, got to talk a little bit of Seven. Seven's a great 90s horror flick.
Yeah.
Seven's great.
You know, and it's a crime flick, and it's one that kind of crosses genres.
Yes.
But by God, that is a horror movie,
Yes.
and it's strong. I actually would put Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me in this conversation. I think that there was kind of a lot of those sort of movies that, you know, definitely breach the line between thriller and horror. You know, I don't know if David Lynch would agree with me or not, but he's a weird dude. I love David Lynch, but I don't know what he would say about that. But yeah, so I don't know. I think you got some, if you want to talk about realistic horrors, you know, Seven, Silence of the Lambs. You know, I think that was kind of cinema's answer to being burnt out on our slasher icons.
Right.
It's like, no, these are real killers.
But also, though, in the same sense, though, Scream was sort of inspired by the Gainesville Ripper as well.
Oh, yes. No, that's very true.
And it also kind of inspired some other morons to go on killing sprees and do the same thing.
Okay, what about, because you said there was the crossover between the thriller and horror, what about the opposite crossover? We saw some really fun comedic horrors emerge in the 90s. We had Army of Darkness.
Yes.
And we had Tremors.
Yes.
I love the
I was
Tremors
thinking
movie.
Tremors.
Tremors
As soon
was
as you
great.
said comedy, that was the one that popped in my brain.
Yes.
Those are awful. awful.
And we love them
And
for
I
it.
love them.
Awfully fantastic. What are you talking about?
They are.
I would argue the first Tremors movie is actually legit good.
Yes. Yeah.
But they're so fun. Who doesn't love that one what is his character? I love him, the paranoid guy who's like the prepper.
Oh, Bert?
Oh, I was going to say, I'm
Bert.
glad that we have 20 Tremors sequels because Michael Gross has to eat.
Right.
You know, those family ties residuals do not go forever.
And Jamie
you know?
Kennedy's been in the last couple, so, I mean, he's got to eat, too.
Oh, my God.
Good old Kenny, good old Randy from Scream. Come on.
I don't know if Jamie Kennedy needs to eat anymore.
He is a little chubby,
that's
but hey,
not
he's
body
still-
shaming. That's more
I
just
still love him.
maybe he should go away. No.
I don't know where this
Ouch.
conversation went, but it was not in a good spot.
That took a turn.
It veered way different.
I'm sorry that I wished death on Randy. I'm sorry. But
he
you know what?
already died,
Ghostface
damn
beat
it.
me to it.
Yes, I know.
I loved it. Scream. It was still a good slasher flick. Super good fun. But it also knew how to make fun of its own genre.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, that was just awesome. Like, the fact that Randy gave us all the rules to a horror film. And it's like, in a horror film.
Yes.
Like you were saying earlier, that's so meta.
Right?
Don't say you'll be back, because you won't be back.
I'll be back.
There's so many
This is
good
a horror
lines in it.
podcast,
Yes.
so we got to give credit where credit is due. There is a character in the 80s slasher film Final Exam by the name of Radish. And Radish is kind of like a proto-Randy. So that's my pouring a drink out for my homie
Yes.
Radish,
There you go.
if you will. But
Noted.
I don't think that Randy Meeks would mind that.
Right.
You know, Jamie Kennedy might, but
Randy, no, not so much.
Loved Randy. Yeah, but, you know, Ashley, like you're saying with the movie making fun of itself, I love a movie that can do that. I love a movie that is like, yes, we're doing one thing, but we also realize that we're falling into these stereotypes and we're falling into these, like, categories. And that's why they brought in the concept of Stab, the movie,
Yes.
where we're seeing a reenactment of the first film, and it's awful, and it's horrible, but we're going to sit there and we're going to watch it anyway.
So many great one-liners, though.
So that really brings up my issues with the new Scream, but we won't go there until Ashley watches this, and then maybe that will be one of our
That's going to be one of our
further conversations.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling I could be the dissenting voice in this conversation.
Because we do need to watch or discuss the later 2000 films. Like, we're kind of trying, not successfully, but trying to stick to the early 2000s.
No, but we're trying.
What about Ginger Snaps? Did anybody watch that? I loved Ginger Snaps.
No. When did that come out?
Early 2000s
that came out
was the
in
first
2000. Yeah. That's a great movie. That's a great movie about gender and werewolves, and I would say that Ginger Snaps might be the best werewolf movie since American Werewolf in London.
Yes.
London.
It is specified.
Not Paris.
Just
Not
saying.
No. Well, it's funny. I remember seeing the cover for Ginger Snaps when I worked at Blockbuster in the 2000s. Yes, Blockbuster, kids, where you can go and rent videos and have fun. It was great. I loved working there. I was like the Randy of my life.
And The Cell. The Cell is a great 2000 horror movie.
Ashley's face.
Look at that face. What is that face? For the listeners at home or wherever the hell you listen to this podcast,
Right.
the lunar goddess has given me a smelly face, a squished up,
She was doing
displeasure face,
Yes.
and she apparently doesn't remember Vincent D'Onofrio coming off his dream throne with this like miles-long cape and looking like an extreme badass.
Look, the visual effects of the Cell, like the visual, what is the word I'm looking for? Not effects. Just the set design and the beautiful, elaborate way that they made it was no doubt the beautiful art.
And excuse me, it gave us an excuse to have 90 minutes of the acting talents of Miss Jenny from the block. Yes, hello.
But Jennifer Lopez is an awful actress. Miss Jenny from the block is an awful actress. And that is my subjective opinion, so please don't kick me off of Spotify.
No canceling.
Like,
American Werewolf in Paris? What?
don't
I don't-
cancel
I don't-
me. But Jenny on the block is the same character every single time. She is limited facial expression.
We've had this
And
conversation
she
before.
over exaggerates every line, and it's like, girl, that's not how you really talk. Why are you doing that for the camera? But like, I don't. No, I'm gonna walk it back. I am gonna walk it back.
But
I think
No, tell us what you really think.
Stick to your truth.
I think Vincent D'Onofrio is phenomenal. I, however, have a very hard time watching Jennifer Lopez act. I think she's a great performer and a great dancer. I do not really enjoy her films. And when she's cast in a very kind of larger role, it's even more difficult for me to get through it. So, remember my Sarah Michelle Gellar?
yeah, that's where I was going with this whole thing. I was like, we just had this whole conversation about Sarah Michelle.
That's how I feel. And it's not like a catty thing. I just really do not connect with her acting. So that's all it is.
So, to get us into a different movie that I'm bringing up my list of 2000s horror movies, and apparently my phone thinks I only want the year 2000, which is fine.
Which is fine.
Bruiser. George Romero late movie. Has anyone seen Bruiser?
Nope, can't even say I've heard of it.
Bruiser is about a man who wakes up and has no face. He has a blank for a face.
That's unfortunate.
It's a really interesting film. The Misfits did some music for it. I think it's underrated. Apparently, it's underseen, and I'm honestly surprised it hasn't got a Scream Factory release, or something to kind of bring it back from not being seen well enough. If you want to go in the opposite direction, you're talking about funny. We talked about Scream. We could also talk about 2000's Scary Movie.
Yep,
That's
absolutely.
just a comedy.
It may have given us my one character that I love more than Randy Meeks, which is Regina Hill's Brenda Meeks.
Yes.
because she is amazing. No, but I think it's really funny that we did get a movie that was a parody of a movie that is, in a way, a parody of movies.
Which also took the original title of Scream. So
That's right.
Take my little hand. It's my strong hand.
Strong hand. That would be Scary Movie 2,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen. Also, American Psycho came out in 2000.
I liked What Lies Beneath. I thought it was kind of fun, a little whodunit. I wouldn't watch it a ton. It borderline is not a horror until the end.
right.
I feel like that's when they kind of pulled to make it a horror, but don't judge me. But I absolutely loved Jeepers Creepers.
I was
love Jeepers
surprised
Creepers.
that we've made it this far without talking
know.
about Jeepers Creepers, and I was like, how do I sneak that one in?
Love Jeepers Creepers. Be Eating You. That was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I got excited. I laughed and giggled and got excited when I saw the license plate. And I'm like, ha.
Oh, dear.
It's
Just
hard,
like that.
guys. It's hard because
That's what she said.
on
That's
one
what she
hand, look,
said, guys.
we don't want to go there with this one. It's difficult because when I saw Jeepers Creepers in the theater, a lot of people didn't like the twist that came at the end of the first act, which, spoiler alert for 20 is that he's a monster. He's a monster. That first opening is like the opening of Scream. It's super scary. It's super intense. And you're like, oh my God, how are they going to keep this intensity up?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, the wings come out, and I was like about to stand up in the theater like, oh my God, it's a monster movie. We had just had all of these teen slashers after Scream. But I have to be honest, and we all have different lines where we separate art and the artist. But it always needs to be said that Victor Salva, the director of Jeepers Creepers, is a terrible pedophile.
Absolutely.
And abused a child on the set of his film Clown House, and is somehow still working. And he works mainly in a series about a monster that covers attractive parts of bodies.
That's awful.
There's going to be a new movie coming out. I don't know.
He's not
how
attached to that, I don't think, right?
I can't imagine he doesn't get some sort of money. And that being said, I like the Jeepers Creepers films. It's tough. I just think it needs to be said. It doesn't mean that people are wrong for watching it. I can sit here and damn Marilyn Manson for being a terrible piece of crap, but then I can talk about how much I enjoy Rosemary's Baby. And so, we all have different areas where we draw the line. But I feel like the stick in the mud that has to bring it up if we're talking about Jeepers Creepers, because I do think it bears talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely loved Jeepers Creepers 1, but because to your point of what had happened, I still haven't watched 3 to this day. I watched 1 and 2. I haven't watched 3. But I will say, because it's true to me, I did really enjoy Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. I thought the first one was fucking phenomenal for a monster movie.
I agree.
But absolutely, though, atrocious man. What about The Ring?
Yeah.
Ooh.
The early 2000s fun
Right.
film?
Yes.
The introduction to a lot of people to J-horror.
Yeah.
Kind of the start of Americans' obsession with J-horror. Uzumaki is a film that popped up on my list, which is a great adaptation of a manga. But yeah, no, The Ring is excellent. I feel like the remake is even fairly decent, although I was always bothered by American remakes of Japanese horror because it's like, just show the movie. Just show the movie and make people read subtitles.
Cabin Fever?
Cabin Fever?
All fun ones. There's like a lot of. I think we forget the early 2000s. There was a lot of fun ones out there. A little bit of like the remake of 13 Ghosts, and we have House of a Thousand Corpses. Yes. I'm a big zombie fan. Yes. Rob Zombie film. I don't give a fuck what people say. Come at me, bro. I love Rob Zombie films. Yes. House of a Thousand Corpses. Double Rejects. I'm that girl who liked his Halloween version. So
I did too.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if we're going back to like the comedy / horror stuff, Shaun of the Dead. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead's great. That's a great horror film. That's also a comedy film. It's You mentioned Slither earlier.
Yeah.
Slither is a great comedy horror film.
Yes. I love that.
I mean, if we're all just going batshit crazy with the decade, there's a film. It's got a couple sequels that I would definitely recommend if you haven't seen it. Cold Prey.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
Fritt Vilt is the title. It is a Norwegian slasher film, 2006, the first one, and it is basically Norwegian's answer to Scream. It's not quite as meta. It has its moments, but it's basically a group of teenagers who go skiing in the Alps, and one of them breaks their leg, and there's a storm coming in, and so they have to take refuge in a abandoned ski resort, where they meet a slasher who is one of the scariest slasher villains of modern slasher days, in my opinion. He's this crazy snowman-looking guy, not snowman as in Jack Frost, but snowman as in person
Abominable
with a parka. Yes, no, more of a person with a parka.
Gotcha.
A man out in the snow, so to speak.
Winterized lumberjack.
Yeah, appropriately
Maybe
dressed
nothing
for
like
weather.
a snowman at all.
It's a
but
winterized lumberjack.
Snow
It is,
space man.
But that would be my, out of all the films we've talked about tonight, or today, whenever you're listening to this, I would say that that would be my recommendation to go look for this movie, Cold Prey. I think you can find it streaming, but it's very good, and I don't know.
Speaking of horror films in the early 2000s set in the winter, across the seas, overseas, Dead Snow. That was a fun one. I'm not a zombie person in general, but that was a good fun. That was kind of campy, and I liked it. Makes you scared to use a porta potty.
I mean, so did The Hills Have Eyes, too, for me. But, yeah.
Porta potties are just scary anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of those films emerged around the early 2000s, like the, backwoods, mountain inbred, murderous things going on. Like we had Hills Have Eyes, Wrong Turn, just so many, like really fun ones. Good fun. Which also means I would be paranoid when I go camping and I'm like,
Right.
What was that? Is that an inbred mountain man? It's just like,
No, it's just a mountain lion like you had to deal with last time.
no, it's just a mountain man. He's not inbred. Jeez.
Just
Stereotypes.
a fine Appalachian gentleman.
It's the It's the brawny guy. It's the paper towel guy.
The brawny guy. Mr. Clean, what are you doing out here in the woods?
Paul Bunyan.
Oh, gosh. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap it up this evening in our season finale of 3Haunted Podcast Season 2?
I know you were checking your notes. Do you have anything extra?
I do not.
No? No. Okay. Final thoughts on the genre? No. But final thoughts for the season finale? Absolutely.
No.
I just want to thank you, Ashley, for continuing to do this podcast. Losing Kevin was kind of a pain in the butt, and it was hard at first, but we made it work with all of the amazing people that we know that came on. Nathan, Shane, Callie, all of them. Lila also for ghost hosting with us because, I mean, come on. You bring something to the table that I don't even bring to the table, and I love it. But no, I just want to thank you all for being amazing. And to the listeners, of course, who do listen, we wouldn't have a reason to do this without you guys. So thank you guys for that as well. Those are my thoughts.
That was so nice. I'm emotional. I know I act like a toughie, but don't make me cry.
That was my plan all along.
I know you like to make me cry. All right, Nathan, any last thoughts?
I would say the 90s were amazing years for horror. I think we have a lot of diversity in material to find, and we barely probably scratched the surface in our conversation. And the 2000s, of course, had some very good offerings. But then just my own thoughts for the podcast. Just you guys, thank you so much for having me on a few times. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's great what you guys are doing. And yeah, I can't think of two people I'd rather chat with about how wonderful an actress J-Lo is. Thank you for that opportunity. Mad love, J-Lo.
Jenny on the block, he's got your back.
Horror is what you make it, whether that is slasher films, monster films, found footage, psychological thrillers. Horror can be whatever, and I think that that's what I love about the genre so much, is it's not all jump scares. It's not all in-your-face gore. It's subtle. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes, yes, it is jump scares and uncomfortable, but I think that is something to embrace about the genre and, take the time and look for new things and find what works best for you within the genre, because there's so much out there. And I just think that that's very cool.
If you don't, because you said found footage, so if you don't know, if you're like, I don't like found footage, you're missing. There's so many amazing films that maybe the one you watched isn't for you, but if you're looking for a good fun film, I'm just going to throw out there, because this was in the 2000s, Creep 1,
yes.
Creep 2, go check it out. Yeah. Disturbing as fuck. It'll make you think twice about meeting strangers off the internet. All right. Hey, what year was Strangeland?
I don't know. Late 2000s?
Oh, that was,
1998.
Jesus.
Add that to my list. Fucking A, add that to my list. All right. Sorry. That's on my list.
And then as for 3Haunted, I am grateful for the opportunity to come on here every so often and just hang out and have a good time and support in any way that I can. So thank you both for allowing me to do so.
Now she's making me cry too.
In terms of the genre, honorable mention and nod to the amazing Milla Jovovich. Without her, we wouldn't have Alice, Resident Evil.
Yes.
And loved some of her indie horror films that she did, Ultraviolet.
Yes, that was a good one too.
I saw Nathan's face when I said that. You stop that. Next season, we'll get into the video games and the books, okay? Yeah, I think that, like Nathan said, there's just so many films. In any decade you look, you're going to find just a plethora of amazing horror films, and not so amazing, but still fun to watch and entertaining, if nothing else. And do yourself a favor and go rent some. Netflix it, YouTube it, Tubi it, Shudder it. There are so many streaming sites that put stuff out there, even for free. Check out Plex. My boy Nathan's on there with Headless.
Yeah.
He's like, no. There's so many out there. Go out there and have some good fun with horror. It's not always meant to scare. It's just entertaining, and it's a thrilling ride if you let it be. In terms of 3Haunted, holy cow, what a ride it is. When we started this, I would have never thought I'd be where I'm at today with you guys, having amazing guests like Nathan, and having just a time of my life. I laugh and say things I never thought I would say out loud to the public.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm able to flourish as me just by being able to engage in conversations and topics that I truly enjoy. So thank you for being on this ride with me. I couldn't choose a better group of people to do it with.
Now you're making me cry. Tear up.
John, you keep talking about crying, and it brings me back to, and you're going to cry?
I'm going to cry.
She's going to cry. All right, someone bring us home.
All right, I will do it. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the very last episode, episode 40, by the way. The last episode of season 2 of 3Haunted Podcast. I am your co-host, John Thomas.
I am Ashley, Lunar Goddess.
And I'm your ghost host, Lila Kay.
If anybody has any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to email us at 3hauntedpodcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so by episode 40, please follow us, like us on all of our social media.
Stay meta, pals. 3Haunted, signing off.